This is America's Sports Talk Show, Sports Byline USA. Here's Ron Barr.
Dean Miller joins us on Sports Byline, and if you're a pro wrestling and WWE fan and aficionado, then you'll want to check out a book called WWE Smackdown. It's co-authored by Dean Miller and Jake Black, and the book relives the greatest moments, biggest superstar debuts, and key matches of WWE Smackdown, and it covers 20 years of the most unforgettable moments, both in the ring and behind the scenes, and also it celebrates all the most exciting matches, celebrity appearances, and controversies in SmackDown history. And one of the co-authors, Dean Miller, joins us on Sports Byline. What's the genesis of this book? What was the motivation for writing this, Dean?
Well, WWE's been around for over 50 years, but some of their television shows, of course, Raw has been a staple on Monday night for over 25 years. And in 1999, because there was still even more demand from the fans, or the WWE universe, as WWE likes to call them, for more content, they created this show, SmackDown, that would run on Friday nights. And it's just had such a rich history that as they approached this 20th anniversary, which just passed last month, it just made sense to chronicle as much of it as possible, and so that new fans could learn about the history, and longtime fans could thumb through it and say, "Oh, I remember when that happened. Oh, that was so great." And the color photos are amazing, and it's just it's a really nice walk down memory lane, or an opportunity for new fans to see the long-standing history of SmackDown.
What's the individual image of SmackDown as compared to the other promotions that WWE has had?
Well, I think SmackDown is often known for giving more up-and-coming superstars their first opportunity. It's also got some real high-flying action a lot of times. But like in 2002, Batista, John Cena, and Randy Orton all debuted on SmackDown. Now, they often went on to eventually move over to Raw and become even bigger stars, or in the case of John Cena and Batista, move on to Hollywood, become big stars. Of course, Batista's in the Marvel movie as Drax the Destroyer. But I think that's one of the hallmarks of SmackDown, is that young superstars get kind of their first big break on national television, and it's a chance for people to really have some high-flying action matches as well.
You know, when you take a look at SmackDown and WWE, I am just amazed. I remember as a kid, I used to watch professional wrestling, and like most people, you go by it, and there was something that just grabbed you about professional wrestling. And, of course, McMahon and others have taken it to another level. How did it get as big as it is?
That's a great question. Obviously, it's been around for over 100 years, but it used to be very territorial, where people would, someone would just work in Texas or in the Northeast. And of course, it wasn't the international thing it is today. There was, of course, wrestling in Japan and wrestling in Mexico and wrestling in Europe, but there wasn't one kind of unifying brand. And what Vince McMahon did was he went out and said, I'm going to turn this into, I'm going to turn this small, because he had this territory that was basically Maine to Maryland, is what WWF back at the time was called. But he didn't see why he couldn't make his a global brand, so he went and cut deals with the biggest stars from all around the United States, and then, of course, was the first person to really do closed-circuit events like WrestleMania, and it just has become a bigger and bigger and bigger event. I would say WrestleMania weekends are akin to Super Bowls and World Series, getting people from all over the world converging on a city to just enjoy not just the Sunday night event, but all the ancillary events as well.
And when you take a look at some of the unforgettable moments over 20 years, what are your favorites?
Well, one of the things that's really impressive, I thought, was, of course, SmackDown used to tape on Tuesday nights, and then it would air on Thursdays. And so Tuesday, 9/11/2001, was, of course, when tragedy struck and everyone canceled everything. But WWE held SmackDown in that same time. I believe it was Houston 2 days later, and it was the first kind of mass public event post 9/11. And it was really impressive, and a little bit of a, you got chills just seeing, them providing some much-needed entertainment for a country that had, suffered and was still suffering and didn't know where we were going after those horrible attacks. So for them to be there 2 days later, I thought that was a pretty cool moment, and I think it's one of SmackDown's most signature moments.
When you think of the storylines that always go along with professional wrestling, how hard is it to create storylines for all the participants and also for the event itself?
It's a real challenge because I think you've got so many variables in that. First of all, I think you really have to listen to what the fans want, and so you might have planned something, or you want to get behind one guy, and the fans they voice their opinion, and they get behind it. Most recently, Kofi Kingston, he was with WWE for 11 years and never had a world title match. And he got into a match at Elimination Chamber, which was not one-on-one, but it was 6 guys competing. And the fans just really got behind him, and he put together such an amazing match that you could tell that Mr. McMahon and the McMahons didn't necessarily want to make him part of the main event of WrestleMania, but the fans would not be denied. And so, there was probably some other plan or story going into WrestleMania 35, but it had to be changed on the fly. And, of course, it's not just fan demand. People get hurt. And so all of a sudden, we're going to do this. There's a plan that, here's what the champion's going to do over the next 6 months. Like the Hardy Boys were the SmackDown Tag Team Champions until about 2 weeks ago when one of them got hurt and they had to forfeit the titles last week. So there's a lot of scrambling on the fly, and I get the sense that sometimes plans change often the morning of an event, and so it's hard, to necessarily, you can't map things out because there's a realness to it that I think sometimes people don't associate with professional wrestling, but it's there.
Another thing about WWE Smackdown has been the celebrity appearances, and I've seen some of them, and I kind of have to laugh and chuckle. How hard is it to implement them into the whole production?
Well, it goes. I think it varies from person to person, and some are really into it, and they kind of get what's trying to going on. And so I believe Arnold Schwarzenegger was on a very early episode of SmackDown, even before he was the governor of California, and it was very entertaining. And I think he made a couple more appearances, and eventually was inducted into the WWE Hall of Fame. But I think, a lot of people, come from music or movies, not just to promote their movie, but to get in touch with a whole new audience. And most of them were fans when they were kids, so it's kind of exciting for them to be in that part of the world, even though maybe they're more famous in some other world, be it like singing or acting.
Was Donald Trump at one of the SmackDowns? I remember he was on the wrestling presentation, but I don't know if there was a SmackDown or not.
He spent more time with Raw, and
okay.
When he had his battle with the billionaires with Vince McMahon, and which led to poor Vince getting his head shaved, although it grew back eventually, and he was actually inducted into the WWE Hall of Fame back in about 5 years ago.
We've got about 2 minutes left. The fans see what happens in the ring. What don't they see? What about behind the scenes?
Well, I worked at WWE for 7 years, and the behind-the-scenes thing that impresses me so much is the tireless work the superstars put into doing charity efforts for their fans. Like, John Cena has granted over 600 Make-A-Wish wishes, and he's doing that when he's, at the same time where he was wrestling a full-time schedule. And they work with the Special Olympics or reading programs, and of course there's a big military outreach within WWE to the point where they do a tribute to the troops show once a year around the holidays. So I think that's the tireless work that these men and women put in to support their fans and show thanks for, the way the fans support them. It's really inspirational.
We have a minute left. What do you think is going to be the long-time legacy of WWE Smackdown?
I think, first of all, I don't think it's going anywhere. In fact, it's been on the USA Network for the last couple of years, but Fox just acquired it in a 4-year deal that is paying WWE, I believe, $1 billion. So it's just going to continue to grow and get bigger, and I think there's going to be some real synergy with Fox. with the football broadcasts and their primetime network lineup, as well as WWE. So I just think it's going to be continue to grow, and it's just part of the kind of pop culture landscape, and I don't think it's going to change anytime soon. There'll be ups and there'll be downs, and but it'll still continue to eventually grow and grow.
Dean, congratulations to you and Jake on this book. It's fascinating. It's got some great pictures in there and the stories as well. You guys have done a great job in really capturing the whole feel and sense of WWE and SmackDown. Thank you for joining us here on Sports Byline. You're welcome. Come back and join us again.
Thank you, Ron. Anytime.
Again, Dean Miller with us. He is the co-author of this book, along with Jake Black, called WWE Smackdown, and the book relives the greatest moments, biggest superstar debuts, and key matches of WWE Smackdown. This is a very fascinating book about a very fascinating subject. We continue across the country and around the world with you on Sports Byline.